Well, welcome to part 3 of the finish line, and what a more appropriate term to use, because we're talking about crossing the finish line on the sale of a business. This is part 3. We've discussed the contract to purchase in general format. We've discussed what you need to do with your attorneys. We've discussed a potential employment agreement and a leasing agreement. But there's so many other components that could side rail the transaction, even if the process is moving along. So I want to discuss those things, and then in our part 4 I'm going to wrap everything up. But as you're negotiating the contract to purchase, which is the final agreement, and it sets the terms and conditions and the liabilities and the exposures and the total compensation, you also have to keep your eye on the ball. Many buyers, whether they're a trucking company or a private equity firm, are really investors. And when they're going to pay their hard money, they're going to continue to look at your operation. So if your revenue starts sliding during your review of the contract to purchase, if your income starts sliding, or if you start increasing debt simply because you have ordered some new tractors, that could kill the deal. So when you're in the due diligence process, don't incur any additional expenses. If you've made commitments on trucks, you need to discuss it with the buyer. You need to get their input, and if you have to hold off on the purchase because they're standardizing their equipment, then do it. But what you don't want to do is create additional debt that could offset their financial projections and kill the deal. Remember that every day you're going through the due diligence process, every day you're going through a contract review, you are running up the meter. Those are your expenses, they're not the buyer's expenses, and if you don't cross the finish line, you could be left in a very serious financial dilemma. Additionally, it's very important that you understand that if things start sliding backwards, and they continue to slide backwards, it could kill the deal. So as you're trying to cross the finish line, you also have to focus on the bigger picture of keeping the revenue at least consistent, if not growing. Strategic buyers, when they buy a company, unless they're what we call a capacity buyer, they're looking for growth, they're looking for people that think outside the box. So simultaneously, you have to negotiate the contract to purchase, you have to negotiate the employment agreement and make sure that it's appropriate, and if there's a lease agreement, you have to also go through those processes. Now, assuming that the contract to purchase has been approved, assuming that you've instructed your attorney and you've also talked to the buyer, please don't run up the meter. Please, let's redline the issues that are concerning me. Let's all get on a phone jointly. Let's resolve these issues. Let's pound out the contract. And then you do the same thing with the employment agreement, and you do the same thing with the leasing agreement. In reference to terms and conditions, you need to know beforehand, and you need to be able to justify beforehand what the market value of the terminal is in your given area. And most people don't understand that. You don't have to go out and get an appraisal. You contact a realtor and say, if I wanted to lease my terminal today, please send me something in writing, and get it from 3 or 4 different realtors. That's enough to substantiate where the market should be, and that's enough to substantiate whether you're going to have any issues going forward. Next week's going to be the most critical component of crossing the finish line, and that's understanding the terms and conditions and what your obligations are, and what happens if certain conditions aren't met that will derail the closing. Until next time, thank you for attending the finish line.